Hey there, welcome to episode 96 of the Let's Innovate for Vegas audio program. I am your host, Managing Director of the Innovate for Vegas Foundation, Dan Hugo. We are recording this at 10:18 a.m. on Tuesday, December 17, 2024. You can already hear it in my voice. The weather is changing. I'll apologize now in case my voice gives out. I do have a cup of tea beside me, Egyptian licorice. It's delicious. Episode 96. Today we are speaking about sprints versus marathons. What on earth does that mean? If you are not familiar with the Innovate for Vegas Foundation, we are a Nevada nonprofit corporation. We are also a 501c3 public charity. Our purpose statement on file with all the appropriate authorities to enable and encourage ideation, innovation, and implementation to make our communities better. They don't have to be communities near us. They can be anywhere. And we left it purposely vague. We are not a tech-focused organization. We're focused on innovation. Innovation can take many forms. I've talked about this in various episodes previously, but if you've never heard any of those, you can innovate with food, with video, with audio, with the written word, with the way you implement accessibility. You can do some coding. We take all comers, and the idea is to be creative, collaborative, and to ideate, innovate, and implement. To implement is to make it happen. And when you're making it happen, sometimes you got to decide, is it going to be a sprint or a marathon? And that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, wherever you found this audio program, I hope you are able to locate the episode description, which contains the show notes. The show notes have a summary, which I will read to you. There are the usual links. There's no additional for today. I didn't want to deluge you as the year comes to an end with yet more reading material. I'm sure you follow the links to all my other audio programs. So let's begin, shall we? The summary of the summary of today's episode. Hang on a second. All right. Yeah, when I speak, when my allergies are reacting to the weather change, I guess, or whatever's in the air reacting to the weather changes. When I'm speaking, my voice will go very dry all of a sudden. That's what just happened there. So, swig of tea. Back in the lane. The summary of today's episode is thus: there are pros and cons being a nonprofit upstart. We're only two and a half years old, formally, since we incorporated. Nonprofit upstart in the innovation space. One thing that is a bit of both is a general lack of market forces driving releases of early initiative efforts. So when we start a new idea, there's really no pressure, which can be good or bad. That is, we have no ship dates for our initiatives, so no rush. But also, no rush. Sometimes it's good to have a little rush. Like a little, I don't mean Tom Sawyer, I mean a little bit of pressure, a little bit of ticking clock. But not always, especially not for the volunteer space, which can be tricky. The links in today's episode, like I said, same as usual. Sorry about that. Pardon me. It's going to be one of those days. Innovate for Vegas Foundation homepage. Innovate for Vegas, F-O-R. No punctuation. Innovate for Vegas. Then a period. Then org. O-R-G. It's our homepage. It is hosted for free on the GitHub pages. So it's not an exciting page. It's a website. It's basically one page at the moment, but we're going to break that up into different components so that we can draw in updates from our various initiatives and those websites, which will also live on GitHub. So we'll be able to present a more dynamic set of static pages, if that makes sense. So visit that for what we're all about and so on. And there's a link to the current episode of this audio program right there. Very exciting. It's a player link, so you can play it right from your web browser. projectact.info, project-act.info. The hyphen is the key, probably between the 0 and the equals sign on your normal QWERTY keyboard, but your mileage may vary. Technically not a dash, not an N dash, not an M dash. It should be a hyphen. Projectact.info is about the autonomous cohort tessellation, which is an initiative we're driving to try to encourage connection, communication, and collaboration among cohorts of civic volunteers, whether they are individuals, groups of people, maybe they're a formal nonprofit entity as we are, maybe they're a 501c3 public charity as we are. It could be anybody. there should be no barriers to entry if people want to just throw some of their time, effort, and expertise into the ring and maybe elevate some community somewhere. It doesn't even have to be their own. So it's our initiative. It's an open source project. It's our initiative, though, to, I say project, it's an addition, you know what I mean, Project Act. The idea is to get people to kind of adopt this notion of a decentralized, bottom-up discovery infrastructure, kind of, anyone who's familiar with RSS feeds, and if you're listening to podcasts, maybe you are, it's kind of like that. You publish a description of your project and so on. It should be pretty cool if we can get some adoption, and we'll see where it goes. Agileforvolunteers.org. That's agile, AGILE, FOR, volunteers, no punctuation.org. It's our initiative to bring the old school, original core principles, first principles of Agile, the Agile Manifesto, into the volunteer space. We don't focus on code. The original Agile Manifesto was written by and for software engineers. Let me get a little moisture here. Yes, I said moisture, moist. So by and for software engineers or programmers, however you want to label yourselves. But what if you're not a programmer? No, fear not. We are trying to enable collaboration, not coding. So it could be coding, but it could be other things. Collaboration amongst volunteers to collaborate on initiatives and component projects. So all that's kind of spelled out behind the scenes. The homepage at the moment is pretty Spartan, but there's more work to do. And hey, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. Mastodon for Vegas, still a work in progress. I only put it on here so that people will begin to see it. Our Mastodon server, we got to get it out there. There's a bunch of finer points, and I don't want to rush. It's basically one person working on it, and that person is creating a podcast audio program at the moment. It's a deployment issue, so we're not developing something new here. We're going to roll out a Mastodon server. You can too. We will, however, integrate ActivityPub, which is the thing that is part of the decentralized, federated system architecture of Mastodon and multiple Mastodon instances talking to each other. So it's a pretty neat thing. Could be a little bit smoother to deploy and to deal with, but that's it. What do you want for free, right? Actually, there needs to at some point, even if you're doing a free project, there needs to be a little bit of an accounting of are we making it harder to use this thing? Because if we're spending our time on it, if we want other people to use it, maybe we should spend some time on making it usable. And that includes deployable. Anyway, those are the usual links. Check them out. So civic volunteerism and nonprofit foundations, a little introduction here. We have covered this a bit in previous episodes, how the time, effort, and expertise contributed by volunteers to any endeavor, whether initiatives or component projects, to mentorship, administering a nonprofit, whatever the case may be. There's always the little stuff that nobody writes down, those things too. The drive to do this must come first from within, especially in an all-volunteer organization such as ours. So I'm not paid. Nobody in our board of directors is paid. Nobody is inured. Nobody gets anything tangible. There's no upfront upside to this. And we want to keep it that way so that we are not paid employees telling volunteers what to do. So we are uncompensated. Unlike some top-down organizations working at large scale, we are all in on this together, so to speak, without paid management telling volunteers what to do. The moment you have a paid managerial infrastructure with volunteers, personally, I feel that's a little bit uncomfortable. You're volunteering your time, but I'm being paid to give you tasks to work on. That would take a little bit more convincing, I think. So we're all in this together. We all hopefully will benefit from the long tail, since there's mostly the notion of a long tail return, not to mention, so in other words, we're not looking to spin off projects, put them out on the internet and start making money. It's not how a nonprofit works in general, but it's not how we are attacking this. But over time, if we build things that do work, the possibility of spinning them off really spinning them off into commercial external projects or to make them deployable so that people can deploy them themselves in a monetizable way, then obviously the people that built that should be a part of any spin-off or any, a first refusal to continue contributing to a project, but, monetized for money or however that works. But the idea is to start off kind of bootstrapping with personal capital, I suppose you could say, personal experience and effort and so on, and then to turn that through collaboration and some commitment to the long term, the long tail, turn that into something that could be a viable business. And so that's been the approach thus far. So we're all in this together. Everybody has their own individual reasons, but hopefully we can turn or convert the effort that was put in the early times into some sort of a return. It could be a portfolio, like, hey, I worked on this cool project, put it on the old resume, get a job, add it to your personal portfolio in general. It's just a one more experience item. You might learn something, you might teach something, and usually those go together. So there are a lot of things that might come from a civic volunteer contribution effort on the part of the volunteer, and then how that impacts the team that's collaborating and so on. But it is really a long tail. The sprint is not a great idea. You will hear the term sprint every once in a while. We're having a sprint. We do a 1 week sprint. We do a 2 week sprint. We do a 1 month sprint. However long the sprint is, the idea is that you're going to focus your attention, because that's otherwise something you don't do when you're at work, I guess. While we are adopting a methodology inspired significantly by the original Agile Manifesto, not the current Agile Industrial Complex version that everybody seems to have a problem with, we are not adopting the sprint terminology, which was not really a part of Agile thinking initially anyway. The word sprint, and I wrote spring, so I'm going to fix that right now. I don't know who types these notes. It's somebody else taking over my hands or something. The word sprint implies a short distance, high exertion blitz. I put that word in there myself, blitz. That is not a great idea all the time, even in the workaday world. It's not always necessary to heads down, we're not doing anything but this for 2 weeks. Every once in a while a sprint. But if you get into the everything is a sprint, then nothing is a sprint, really, when you think about it, right? We're just going to focus on work this time? Okay, that's interesting. That's not like usual. For anyone contributing their time, effort, and expertise, and I'll use those 3 terms a lot when I'm talking about volunteers, it's really easy to forget that all those 3 things are a component of a contribution of volunteerness. So they're contributing those to some endeavor. Doing so under pressure can be tricky. The hackathons are a special case, so we're not really talking about those here. It's not the best thing for everyone to think that you're in a hackathon all the time, that you're always under the gun or have a ticking clock over your head. But if you're a volunteer collaborating with other volunteers, odds are that you and they are going to accomplish what you can over the time interval at your own pace. And that's the original Agile was really leaning more towards this. It was still aimed at employees of companies, and specifically programmers or computer engineers or software engineers who were employees of companies working on a company project, etc. But generally speaking, the idea was to try to make the most of whatever the iteration time interval was, so that everybody kind of establishes a comfortable pace, almost like they're running. Well, anyway, we'll get to that. So you're going to accomplish what you can in a particular time interval. This is perfectly acceptable, and it is our approach with Agile for volunteers. Use of the term iteration is preferred by some, not just what we're doing, but some people use that term because it puts to rest the notion that this is a rushed race, that we should be straining to break records or risk injury or similar. I was typing so fast that I burned my wrists. Yikes. And that's the working world, where people are paid for their contributions. When it comes to volunteering, there should be very little in the way of such pressures. There could be a little bit of friendly competition, or I really want to finish this weekend, or so that motivation really comes from within. Or maybe if you're on a team of 2 or 3 people and you're kind of going to the gym or playing a little sports, maybe shooting some basketballs around or throwing a frisbee, right? It's becomes a sort of a mini competitive endeavor, but that's not really built into the system. So when it comes to volunteering, there should be little in the way of these pressures. And the one caveat to that would be where customers, users, the reason for building and making whatever we're making and building, they might run into a security issue, a serious problem that may cause data loss or injury, any form of injury. Maybe there's the wording of something might be offensive to someone or may be confusing. There's any number of things that once you've put something out in the world and there's a problem, there's a little bit of a time pressure if there is a problem. Like, oh, we need to fix that first. So hopefully that motivation comes from a certain ethos. Like, I really don't want to put this out there with my name on it and it does bad things, right? Or it doesn't work. It doesn't work as advertised. So that time pressure will come from personal ethos, really, when you get right down to it. The road is long, though. Usually, one might say that the race is long, but this is not really a race in which we are engaged. We're traveling down a path. Almost nothing we hope to accomplish thus far is intended to be accomplished with a ticking clock, with a ship date, with market competitors. We're not trying to go public. We're not trying to close a round of funding. We're volunteers. We're trying to do some community elevation. The market we are working with is hopefully accommodating. Hopefully they'll be happy with the effort we put in. While we do intend to use our Agile for Volunteers methodology across the board, which includes dividing effort up into iteration length chunks of time, and these are usually 2 weeks. So we use iterations to coordinate activity. So if you're a volunteer and you say, oh, I can work on this for 2 weeks, sure. At the end of 2 weeks, you're not expected to work another 2 weeks. You might have other things to do. You might be going on vacation or have a busy time in your the day job, as we call it, or your the way you pay your bills. Congratulations. So we would ask that you commit for 2 weeks, right? Not 2 weeks of full time. It's just that over a 2 week interval of the iteration. If it's 2 weeks, it might be 3 weeks, could be 1 week, whatever it is, everybody agrees, okay, it's this amount of time. This is to enable time management and collaboration, coordination, so you know that, okay, so I need to work with my fellow teammates. We have a 2 week iteration. So during that 2 weeks, I can hopefully shoot a question over. We can have a little chat. We can do some code reviews if it's a coding project. Whatever the case may be, during that time, you're generally saying, okay, yeah, I'm around. I can participate. Outside of the iteration, you might have other things to do. We cannot we can't depend on you responding in a timely fashion to an email and so on. So the iteration is a way of coordinating volunteer efforts so that you can actually be virtually near each other in time and collaborate. So that's the extent of the goal with iterations. So it's not quite the same as the workaday agile industrial complex version where you might be graded on how many story points did you finish and so on. So not quite that. The marathon is not an appropriate term. So we're using, the marathon is the appropriate term, is not inappropriate. See, I confuse myself with my wordsmithing. Thus referring to the marathon is not inappropriate if we're choosing over the use of sprints as a term that we're going to use. We're still not really in a race, but whatever it is, and this could vary per initiative or per team. Maybe the component project itself will have a time element, so maybe it is kind of a race. Depends. Everything depends. There's no real set in stone rules. Maybe it depends on the individual contributors. I think I said that. And the teams that they form, they may want to move ahead a little bit more quickly. They may challenge each other. However it works. There's really no set standard other than trying to coordinate a time commitment over the course of an iteration. It's much more of a long distance effort than a quick trip around a track or a part of a track. So if you're thinking, we got to get this done, that's not necessarily true unless you want it to be true or your teammates or collaborators during the iteration. The marathon, though, implies, as it should, that the road is long If you don't accomplish it this week and you want to work on it again next iteration or 2 iterations from now or however it goes, less pressure. There might not be no pressure, should be less pressure. So internally driven versus partner initiatives, by the way, we are much more of the former. There's one thing that might change everything I just said, and that is whether the particular initiative or any parts of it are executing with outside partners. In other words, hey, we want to work with a library, what do you call, not one individual library, but like a library system, probably in a county. But you want to work with a library system or maybe a transit system, which is something we're doing right now, maybe. Or you want to work in progress. Or you want to engage a non-government organization, or they engage you, right? They may come to you or to us, to your cohort, and say, "Hey, would you like to collaborate on this project? There's some opportunity for some volunteer effort that could turn into an ongoing, sustaining support arrangement." So you basically start off as volunteers, and then they say, "Oh, we're gonna keep this program going. We have budget. We can pay people to contribute to it and to sustain it over time." Hey, that's basically our business model right there. Excuse me. So we're starting off that way with our initiatives, but we'll get to that in a moment. So it's not an uncommon way for some civic volunteer organizations to plan and implement their initiatives. So they're driven by a third party with a particular set of requirements, and maybe they even have some budget to donate to the nonprofit to keep it sustained. So they're not paying people to work. It's still a volunteer project, but they help the organization with donations. And then again, there may be a sustaining or supporting or continuing effort, which if there's a budget for that, or if that spins off and it becomes a budget item, that may turn into employment for the contributors and so on. So that's essentially one of our approaches that makes the most sense for our projects. So in the case of a collaboration with an outside entity, there may be some additional stipulations concerning deliverables and timelines and whatnot, but it is still important. Now it's critical to remember that a cohort of volunteers is still powered by its desire to do good, to elevate communities, and so on. Yes, there may be an opportunity somewhere down that road where you can spin something off and get hired or whatever. It's still always going to be a portfolio opportunity to add it to your list of skills and experience. But it's important to not, I will say, be taken advantage of. That's not necessarily on purpose. But it's very easy to find yourself saying, "Oh, we have a group of volunteers that are motivated to work on this thing. We don't have any budget. We can just sort of try some ideas out and see what happens," and then to forget them later. And that should not be allowed. And that's where I turn on my full annoying, "Hey there, remember that project we all worked on for free that you now have budget for? End of the day, though, it may be asking a lot for volunteers to commit to timelines for third parties. There may be agreement among the crew that's working on it at a particular time that their due dates and their required effort and commitment are in the realm of possibility. Again, you really have to buy into the long tail for the particular component project or overall initiative on which you are working. But the motivation to stick to that whole endeavor still comes from within. It's the nature of the beast. Well, wait, why can't the external third party just pay people? Well, now you're not volunteers, so you really can't be paid through our foundation. So you'd have to actually either work for them directly as a 1099 if you're in the U.S., or you and the team can form a company. You can form an LLC or something. You can be paid. That's a different thing. But once there's payment of individuals, you have to treat that as like an outside project. So not outside the realm of possibility, but it is a different thing. Our model, which I've talked about before, this is not new. A reminder if you've never heard this before or if you've forgotten about it or whatever, our initiatives are internally driven or internally drive. Fire my typist. I'll see him in the mirror later. Which means we are identifying, which means we identified some possibilities for real, viable initiatives that could possibly become viable businesses on their own. Open transit, for example, I've referred to that a few times, and I'll refer to it at least once more. That was, hey, this would be an interesting project, very practical, So now it started off, it was our first thing that we started, Open Transit project. Now it's the Open Transit Initiative. There are several component projects. This is a thing that no one asked for, except that when you talk to anyone who uses public transit around us, they really do ask for it. So nobody puts it in so many words. So he said this would be an interesting way to kick this off. And then we have other initiatives as well that we've kind of come up with based on looking around our smart city and how can we make it smarter. That's our overarching focus of all of our initiatives. So if they interoperate, if our initiatives can actually form a keystone project, is that what the word is? Yeah, keystone. It's not the traditional use of the term, but essentially if they all fit together like an arch, the keystone is, oh, look, we now have a smarter smart city as a result of this arch that we've built, right? So interoperable components or initiatives, they should, if they don't really exist yet, they're still early days, but by design, they should all interoperate so they can all benefit from familiarity over the course of the marathons. So that's the general idea. By driving our own initiatives, we do not need to wait for third parties to tell us what they want. We are essentially bypassing this interposer layer to build things for the people in our communities near and far. So we identify things that make sense and they fit into an overarching narrative, if you will, an overarching goal. Is it Keystone Project? No, it's Capstone. That's the term. Capstone. It's a keystone in an arch. The Capstone Project. Maybe Keystone would be a better use of the term. We can collaborate with third parties. Sure, if it makes sense. We are exploring this with our Open Transit Initiative, for example. So I've talked about this in a previous episode. There could be a way to turn some of the component projects into a shippable project earlier. So we can take the overall initiative, we can break it up into, which is already how we do things, break it up into component projects, and some of the things that could work together on the operation side of a transit company could be developed into a commercializable service that could be sold, if you like, in a vendor relationship, and that could be supported by our volunteer cohort, right? There's a couple of ways to do it, so we're exploring that. So being flexible about how this works means we still don't need to say, oh, by the way, now you're an employee of our... No, you'd be an employee of some other entity. You will always be a volunteer. You're free, quote unquote, free to determine how and why you want to contribute your time, effort, and expertise to our various initiatives and component projects. By applying our Agile for Volunteers methodology, still itself a work in progress, of course, we intend to embrace fully the notion of coordinated volunteer contribution of time, effort, and expertise. I love those three words. Not as beautiful as tariff, according to some, but those are good words. On an iteration basis to make the most of these, with iterations extending over a long period of time. That is a 2-week iteration. You can have many of those. A year, 2 years. It's been over 2 years since we first wrote anything down for the Open Transit project. Now it's the Open Transit Initiative. If the teams want to move fast, we can. If we want to slow it down, we can. In the end, one of the goals of Agile methodology is to release good working stuff. They would say software. I would say more than just software. Anything that is in the overall initiative, anything we want to put our name on, it should work. Here we do not need, here we do it not only for our customers out in any communities. So it could be our neighbors in our local communities outside the window, or it could be people in other countries. Who knows? We're not limiting ourselves. You don't need to be in Las Vegas to innovate for Vegas. We do still have 40 million people visiting here every year, at least. It's a lot of people to try out ideas. But it should work for ourselves as well. The thing that you're working on should satisfy you. Hopefully you're not doing it. I don't like this project, but I'm not being paid to work on it. Oh, okay. Well, then don't work on it. That's okay. So that is why we do not try to have sprints. And sprints for a volunteer organization don't really make sense. If people are familiar with the term, that might be handy, but in general, it's a message that should not be sent. This is not a rush. You're not expected to cross some finish line somewhere. Your time, effort, and expertise, ding, 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 are to be appreciated, not demanded. They're not scheduled in on a timeline with milestones and ship dates. Hey, how come you didn't hit your story points? That doesn't work in a volunteer organization. So yeah, we want people to enjoy being a part of and contributing to our initiatives. We want the outcomes to be potentially viable, and then maybe if they want to continue to contribute to an initiative or whatever results in a spin out company, a startup of some sort, a service entity that has a vendor relationship with some, who knows what's possible. We will know when we ship things. So it's a marathon. And we'll see if we get across some finish line somewhere. Sometimes it's the journey, not the end. So hopefully learning along the way and so on, and then maybe towards some point on the path there will be we can all try it now. We can see if this open transit project is look, it's working. How cool is that? And then you go on from there. And really, when you think about it, most projects that are good don't really end. They'll always be growing and evolving, adapting to changing needs and requirements, becoming better, reacting to user feedback. If you always stick with the same recipe, this seems like it should have more seasoning. Nope, we're sticking with the old recipe. Why not try the new recipe and see what happens? So there you go. You can hear my voice is already timing out. I gotta drink more water, more tea. Keep it short today. I know I sometimes go for an hour. This is going to be closer to 30 minutes when all is said and done. And it's the end of the year. We can take it easy. Maybe you're going to listen to this in 2025. Still keeping it brief today. So thank you for listening as always, and thank you for being a part of the Innovate for Vegas Foundation in some way. Participating this way is good. Other ways also good. So there you go. Take it easy. Bye-bye.